Hey class, I thought I'd finish out the week or the screencast for this week with showing you an example piece of code that would fulfill the requirements for your JavaScript um, code for this week, JavaScript and HTML code for this week. And I thought for my purposes, I would just create something fairly simple and then at the end throw in something a little fun. So I figured the first thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to create basically a div on the screen that I can change the value of it by simply clicking a button. And in this case, we're going to increase the value of the div every time we click the button. And then we'll kind of grow the thing from there. So the first thing we're going to need is a div on our HTML. So we'll come into the body. And I'm going to go ahead and add a div. And once again, I add this output in there simply so that you can see it over here. Typically, you'd probably leave that blank and let the code control it, but that's up to you. And then, of course, we're going to need a button. That's going to be an add button. And I'll go ahead and put that just above the div. So now I have an add and an output. And now I need to create my JavaScript that's going to manipulate that. And so the first things I need to do is create a couple of variables. And the two variables I am going to create is if I'm going to be incrementing this and showing what the new value is going to be, I have to have a variable to store my total. And then we also are going to want to have a variable where I am saving a default value for how much we're going to be incrementing the total each time. And so we're going to call that the interval, and we're going to say that's 1 for now. And the next thing, obviously, we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create a JavaScript function that basically does the math that we need and then outputs the new total out to our div that we created. So I'm going to go ahead and create a function, and to make things go faster, I've gone ahead and just copied and pasted it from another location. And I'll just explain it to you real quick. So we've got a function that I called add1. And inside that function, I'm going to take our total, and I'm going to make the total equal to the total plus an interval, which is 1. So when this code runs, we're going to have the total is going to be whatever total was before plus 1. And then I'm going to do our favorite get element by ID to get my display div, and I'm going to set it to the display text, which is one other variable that I needed to add, which I didn't add. I forget. Part of the assignment was we wanted to have various types in our output, so I decided to create a number variable, 2 number variables, and 1 string variable, which is going to be my output text. So down here in my function, I'm going to take the get element by ID. Like I said, I'm going to get my display div, and I'm going to put in there a concatenation of my display text, which total equals, plus the total. Now, we're doing a little bit here that is odd that I'll talk about later. I told you that adding different types is a problem. JavaScript is smart enough to know that when the first is a string, that it'll convert the numbers to a string as it comes in. So just the output, it'll basically what it's called casting it into a string, so that this type of thing will go ahead and work. And it's a little complicated for us now. Just know that this works. Even though they're different types. So we're going to go ahead and have that. And then, of course, as you guys have found out, this will not work if I don't tie the button to this function and tell this function to run when the button is clicked. So we do that by taking the function name up here and putting it in the onClick. So now at this point, I should be able to click the button, and it's every time I click the button, it increments the total by 1. So now for fun, I want to go ahead and add a subtract button to this so that we can bring the value back down afterwards. And so we'll just go ahead and add in another button. And it resets everything over here, you notice, as I've changed it. So now we have a subtract button. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a function that, as you can guess, is going to be very similar to the one that we just created. The only difference is going to be that we have a minus sign here instead of the plus, and then this is going to decrement it. And then we'll go ahead and grab our function name and tie this function to this button by doing that. And now I should be able to add and subtract. Now that's kind of fun. Just kind of as a bonus here, I'm going to show you guys, we talked about the pre-increment and the post-increment stuff. We could achieve the same thing by just doing the post and basically, sorry, I'm spacing the name right now, but you guys learned the increment and the decrement characters, or not characters, but operations, excuse me, that can be added. And this is an example of how we can take advantage of those to basically get the same function with less code. So that's kind of fun. I'm going to go ahead and add those back because we're going to do something fun now. So the last thing I wanted to show here was I thought it would be fun to go ahead and add some code that allows us to let the user specify what the interval is that is added and subtracted. So we've done something similar to this, and as you guys know, we're going to need an input type that is going to a text input, which is going to allow us to collect the information from the end user. And just for fun, let's go ahead and add a label in front of that so that the end user knows what to put in there. And just so that it's going to be on its own line, I'm going to go ahead and put both of these things inside a div. So that moves this down here. So now we're kind of set up here. Now I'm going to introduce a new fun function. We've got the onClick in here. And one of the other attributes that you can add to an input is an onChange. And this is kind of cool too, because in the last week it got a little messy that you had to click the button in order to load the value. I'm going to set this up so that anytime we change this field, whatever method I put in here will run. So anytime I change it, it just automatically runs. I don't have to push a button or anything. And that's really great for saving variables without the user knowing it's happening. So obviously we're going to need a method that runs every time this is changed. And I'm going to go ahead and grab that function that I've created previously, and we're going to call it a setInterval function. And basically all this does is it takes the interval, which is a variable that we set up here, which we had initialized to 1. So the default interval was 1. And now if they put anything in there, it's going to go out and save into that interval. It's going to do a parse int, which we talked about, the parse float and the parse int briefly, on, and this get element by ID. So it's going to go into the count by input, grab whatever's in there, save it into interval, the value into interval, and then we do the parse int, and this is going back to what we talked about, because what's in here is a string, and our interval up here is a number. And so in order to tell JavaScript that we want this string to be a number, we'll go ahead and parse whatever's in there and turn it into an int before we save it into the interval thing. So that's a little tricky, but that's how we can try to manage the different types inside there when we do need to convert between one and the other. And then I'm going to go ahead and add that to the onChange, which means now things should be working fine. I do add, I subtract, but if I do add in a, let's say, a 6 in here, now it's going to be incrementing by 6 and decrementing by 6. So I hope that's fun and gives you a little bit of an idea of what you can do for your programs this week. Maybe helps you understand a little bit more what we mean by the instructions that we've given you for the programs this week. So, all right, have a good week and good luck with your programs.